Panna, I think you're muted.
Samne Jai Shri Krishna. Good evening all. Namaste. Jai Swaminarayan. Jai Jinendra. Sairam. Om Bhurabhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimai Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhurabhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimai Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhurabhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimai Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Once again, a very warm welcome from Women to Women, and all the participants who's taking part today. A very warm welcome to Carolyn and Daxa. Apologies from Devina. She cannot join us again, but definitely she's in our mind and wishing her father speedy recovery. Yes, today we're going to discuss about stress. All the sessions we've had so far are on YouTube. So if you try to subscribe to our YouTube, you will able to watch all the sessions there. I have started putting the early sessions, the first sessions we've had in YouTube. So you'll see those as well. And the recent ones are already there. Can I also mention to please have your videos on and with your right names on? There will be Q&As at the end of the sessions, which Daxa and I will try and help out with Caroline to answer your questions. And let me invite Caroline now. All yours, Caroline.
Lovely, thank you. As always, it's lovely to see so many people here. As Panna says, we're very happy to answer all your questions, not just around the topic for tonight. So for those of you that are new, if you use the chat box to put your questions in, Daxa and Panna will keep an eye on those, and then we'll try and make sure we get everybody's question addressed at the end. And I would highly recommend for those of you that are new, particularly if you're diabetic, that you do have a look at some of the earlier sessions, because obviously we discussed a lot more about diet there than we're going to do tonight. But the topic of stress came up last week, and we felt it was probably worth exploring that in a little bit more detail today. So I'll just attempt to share my screen. Good, it's there for once. And hopefully you can all see my slides now. So we call these sessions Real Food for Better Health, because the absolute beginning of trying to live a healthier life, it does start with what we eat. But it's all about the whole lifestyle as well. So that's why we're discussing some of the topics that are not necessarily to do with food. I always like to put in a little rider here that I'm speaking to you as a representative of an organisation called Public Health Collaboration, which is a charity that was set up to try and help better educate people about how they can look after themselves with good diet and help improve conditions such as diabetes, blood pressure, and many other chronic diseases with a better diet and lifestyle. I am a retired nurse, but I'm not speaking to you tonight as a medical professional. I'm just passing on information to you. So if you are going to take on board some of our messages and make big changes to your diet, and you happen to be on medications prescribed by your GP, then we would like you to discuss with your GP if you are going to make those changes, so they can monitor you and, if necessary, reduce or even remove some of your drugs. And our aim for a lot of you would be to help you to reduce the amount of drugs that you're taking by improving your general health. So we talk about a healthy lifestyle, say it's not just about food, and a healthy lifestyle starts with eating a very healthy diet. And we talk about real food. We're really into trying to encourage people to cook for their own food from raw ingredients and not rely on heavily processed convenience foods. And particularly to reduce the amount of foods that break down in the body to sugars. Regular physical activity is a very, very important part of a healthy lifestyle, but it has to be seen separately from losing weight. So if one of your goals is to lose some weight, we don't want you to think that if you just exercise a bit more, you can lose weight. It just isn't as simple as that. The diet has to be healthy. We need to exercise, but they are both separate elements of a healthy life, and we shouldn't rely on doing lots of exercise and think we can then eat perhaps not as well as we should. So trying to maintain a healthy weight is obviously one of the important aspects of a healthy lifestyle, and hopefully with a good healthy diet you will manage that. But learning to manage stress is another really, really important part of healthy lifestyle, because actually stress impacts all aspects of our life, including our ability to lose weight, which we'll go on to discuss in a minute. Last time we talked a bit more about sleep, and adequate sleep, again, is very underrated in the modern busy lives. We really do need sleep in order to help our body to function well, and that includes metabolizing the food that we eat and therefore helping us to lose weight. So one of the barriers to losing weight is often not having enough sleep. And then obviously it goes without saying that not smoking and being cautious about the amount of alcohol, should you be somebody that drinks alcohol, those are also elements of a healthy lifestyle. But tonight we're talking about stress. Stress probably plays a huge part in modern life, because we've all got more and more things that impact on our daily life because of the wonder of modern communication and modern social media, etc. It's both a positive but also a negative, and it can be very, very hard to switch off. And I know many of the participants in this, not all but most, are women, and as women, particularly if we're mothers and grandmothers, we try to be all things to all folk. And sometimes we try to look after everybody else, and the last person we look after is ourselves. And that's not actually doing ourselves, but also our families, any favours, because if we get too stressed and break down, then we're not going to be any help to any of them, and we'll become a worry to them. So it really is important for lots of reasons to try and minimise stress or learn how to manage stress. But it has become a very major part of modern life. And it most certainly is a major barrier to losing weight. Lots of people who feel they're doing everything right as far as their diet is concerned, they've taken exercise, but they seem to be struggling to lose weight. Sometimes it's because the stress element in their life is not yet under control. Stress is not all bad. Saying, I won't even attempt to pronounce this guy's name, a German philosopher, but I think it's a well-known saying that which does not kill us makes us stronger, and there certainly is a lot of truth in that. And we are designed to cope with a little bit of stress. In fact, our whole physiology is based around a bit of stress, but then less stressful times. It's when stress becomes chronic that it gets so serious. So we need to learn from the animals. If any of you have had pet cats, you know very well that they have a very stress-free life. Cats have staff, they get life well and truly worked out, and they have an awful lot of downtime, an awful lot of sleep. And we could learn a bit from them, but of course they've probably got an awful lot less going on in their lives as well. But the human body is designed to handle a little stress, and a little bit of an adrenaline rush from time to time is actually, we're meant to have that. It's good for us. It triggers lots of good reactions, good positive reactions. But the problem is that in modern life, that stress has become chronic. And so rather than that short fight and flight bit of stress, where we've got stress pretty much 24/7. The body is designed to cycle in and out of an action state, which we could call the stress state, and a rest state. And we should spend most of the time in the rest state. But as I say, these days, often it's the other way around. So in the action state, the body is designed to conserve energy. So the body will be less focused on digestion. So people who are highly stressed often do have major digestive issues. But also it ups our body's desire to store fat, because it kind of thinks if we're in an action state, a stress state, then trouble is afoot and we might well go for long periods without food. And therefore, we're designed in those moments to store some fat so that, if we do go through the famine stage of the life cycle that our forefathers had, we've got the fat stored for energy to see us through that period. And our bodies haven't necessarily caught on in the 21st century. We are rarely short of food, certainly in the industrialized world, but it still makes us store fat when we're highly stressed. So this is why a lot of people who have got chronic stress problems feel that it's really frustrating, because they're doing everything they think they should be doing as far as diet is concerned, but they're not losing weight. And that's because their body is trying to hang on to all that energy because it thinks it's going to need it soon. So in the rest state, that's when we're designed to eat, because our body has got time to focus on digesting and utilizing all those nutrients. And the body will use the food much more efficiently and store less fat. Comfort eating, which an awful lot of us suffer from these days, is really a manifestation of responding to stress, because we get down, depressed, or we're sad for some reason, and many of us turn to food in those periods. And of course the food that we're turning to now multiplies the problem, because it's often highly processed, snacky type food. But that's why we're eating, because we're in that sort of stress state, and our body's wanting that energy to store. So if you eat while you're in an action state, you are not going to metabolize your food as well, and you're going to store more fat. This is why all the experts say when we have a meal, we shouldn't be having a meal on the go. We shouldn't be having a meal sitting in front of our computers at work. We shouldn't be sitting in front of the television at home. We should be sitting at a table, concentrating purely on the meal, and hopefully socializing with our family. And possibly many of you still do that, but I know in modern life it's become very common that families don't sit around the table and eat. And possibly one of the reasons why the continentals, particularly the French, have a much lower incidence of heart disease and heart attacks than we do in the UK, is because they still value the social aspect of having a meal, and they have those long lunch breaks where they have a long lunch and they take their time over their food and they enjoy their food and they're relaxed while they're eating it. I was fairly horrified some time ago when I did a bit of work for Shell, and in the canteen there was a lovely big canteen, nice and bright and airy, but by all the food sort of displays there were takeaway boxes, and the staff were almost actively encouraged to take their food in a takeaway box and take it back to their desk and eat it while they worked. And this is just not what employers should be encouraging people to do. Employers should be giving people the ability to have a proper lunch break and go and sit mindfully eating their food, rather than hardly noticing what they're eating as they're stuffing it in front of their computers. And of course we do the same if we sit and eat our food in front of the television. We're engrossed in the program we're watching, and we're not concentrating and enjoying and slowly eating the food that we've got. And it's very easy to overeat in those circumstances as well, because you're not really noticing what you're eating, or even noticing whether you're full or not. So we talk about being mindful, and that's not having our mind full of stuff. And I love this. There's a number of cartoons that I've seen that represent the same sort of thing, where you've got the dog with a thought bubble with absolutely nothing in it, maybe just a bone or chasing a cat, but you've got the human beside them with this bubble full of stuff. And that's what a lot of us are like these days. We've got so much on our minds that we are not being mindful about what we're doing. We are just distracted all the time. So we need to work towards being mindful about everything that we do, and most importantly, mindful about our food and thinking about why we're eating. Are we eating because we're bored, because we're worried, because we're stressed, or are we actually eating because we really are hungry? And what happens when you get chronic stress? Thank you. Sorry, I'm just having a cup of tea brought to me. When you are chronically stressed, this triggers a release of the hormone cortisol, and cortisol impacts just about every system in the body. And when there's too much cortisol floating around, it is inflammatory and causes all sorts of issues with the immune system, the cardiovascular system, which could mean high blood pressure, digestive issues. A lot of us talk about, having butterflies in your tummy when you're nervous about something. That's the stress and the cortisol, and obviously adrenaline is released as well when you're highly anxious, and all of these things are impacting your digestive system, your nervous system, obviously your actual mental state. And coming back to our diabetes, it causes a higher blood sugar. So all of these things are really, really harmful to the body. And if it's going on day after day for most of the day, this is impacting us in a very significant and very negative way. So you can get a vicious circle of stress where you've got the trigger that's something that's made you feel stressed and anxious. And your behavior may be, if you're somebody that eats when they're anxious, to eat more food. And it will usually be that bliss factor food, the sort of food that, chocolate, sweets, cakes, biscuits, the sorts of things that are highly addictive. And you eat them and it'll make you feel better in the short term. And the same thing happens with people who drink or smoke in order to relieve stress. They get some relief for short term, but of course that effect wears off. And with food, if you're eating sweet food, it triggers a big insulin rush. That in itself clears the blood from the sugar from your blood and causes a major drop in blood sugar, which drives more appetite and more desire to eat more. So you get a short-term reward from eating that food and you feel better only for a short time, and then the whole cycle gets repeated. So this is a sort of vicious circle of stress, and that most certainly won't help any attempts to lose weight. It'll make matters much worse. So managing stress, one of the best books I can recommend if anybody's into buying books, but you don't need to buy his books necessarily, because Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, who's written this one, The Stress Solution, has also got a wonderful podcast website with nearly 200 podcasts now he's done, talking to lots of people about all aspects of lifestyle, and there's loads of them on stress and meditation and all the things we can do to keep ourselves mentally healthy as well as physically healthy. So I'd highly recommend his podcasts, and on my resources slide at the end of this I have put some links to his podcasts. And he talks about all the ways that we can help to reduce or manage stress, because I can't make all your troubles disappear. I can't make you suddenly have a stress-free life, but it's about recognizing we've got stress in our lives and doing something fairly proactive to help minimize it. So exercise is not only just good physically for our bodies, it's incredibly good for us mentally, and helps to reverse some of the issues with stress. Good sleep. As I mentioned earlier, it's really important that we get adequate sleep. And adequate sleep really should be 7 to 8 hours a night for most adults, not the 5 to 6 that a lot of us sort of end up slipping into habits of having. Meditation is not only good for both helping to induce a sleepy state, but it's also helpful in the mindfulness side of life, and just helping us to take time out, even if it's only 5 minutes, to just pull back, have a moment or two where we sit and just let our mind empty and calm us down. And that can help to reduce that adrenaline, reduce that cortisol, and give our bodies a chance to sort of get back onto a nice equilibrium. And of course, there's nothing better than yoga for helping us to learn about breathing and relaxing, as well as many other aspects of mindfulness. So those all go together. Something that's become much more popular of late and ties in with both the meditation and mindfulness side of things, and indeed something good to do before you try to go to sleep, is journaling. And by journaling, I'm talking about a gratitude sort of diary or journal, where you spend a bit of time each night and again in the morning, thinking about all the things you're grateful for in your life, because it could be you've had a hard day and it's easy to sort of flop into bed and think, oh, all these things that are going on in my life and I've got all the negative stuff running around in your brain. So bringing yourself back to thinking about, well, actually, what's good in my life? What are the good things that have happened today? What am I grateful for? That's a really good thing to do before you try to go to sleep. But equally, each morning, if you start by waking up and thinking about what you're grateful for in the day, and maybe think about what your goals are for that day, and maybe there is something coming up that you're worried about or stressing about, but try and look at it in a positive light and think, now, how can I tackle this so it's the least bad situation? How can I make it a bit better? And actually making a note of these things. That there is good evidence to show that that really helps people. And some of the health coaches I've listened to on podcasts have suggested that, you know, when you do your gratitude journal in the morning, maybe with a nice cup of tea, it's really good if the weather's decent enough to be outside. But even if you can't be outside, maybe be by a window, with the window open, do some deep breathing and have a look at the world around you and look at all the positives in that world before you get stuck into your busy day and start getting perhaps, you know, dragged into some of the stuff that's not so great. So really start the day with a nice positive thought. And one of the ways they suggested that you could do that is to perhaps try and have a laugh in the morning. There's one of the positive sides of the wonderful media that we've got now is that we can go on YouTube and things like that and have a look at old comedy clips, favorite TV series from our childhoods. You know, there's all sorts of ones. Or you might have a favorite comedian, or maybe one of the things I do every morning now is I have a 2-year-old granddaughter who's the light of my life, and she's a really happy little thing. So I've got lots of little video clips of her. And I will often start the day by just looking at one of those, and it just makes me laugh, makes me smile, and it gets me off to a great start. So anything like that that you can do that kind of gets you onto a nice positive frame of mind before you tackle your day. Perhaps going back to the evening time, managing your screen time. I think I mentioned this in the sleep section last time, but it's really important. And it's easier now than ever because we've got lots of catch-up TV and so forth. So you don't have to be watching that program at 10 o'clock at night. You can watch it another time and get yourself calming down for bedtime by maybe reading rather than watching the television or looking at your computer or your phone or whatever you watch social media on, and try and, you know, calm down, all that sort of thing. And socializing is incredibly important for mental health and helping to combat stress. You know, as they say, a problem shared is a problem halved. So, you know, making contact, and of course we've had a really good example of how horrible it is when we can't socialize as much over the last 18 months. And thank heavens we have had the internet to help us do FaceTime and Zoom and so forth. But there's nothing better than getting together with friends and family. But social media is also a positive, but very much can be a negative. So again, it's trying to minimize all of these things that can add sometimes to our stress and do the positive bits, but try and minimize the negative ones. And alcohol is not the best thing to use. And say this audience, probably there are few of you that are too keen on the alcohol, but alcohol is a very short-term stress reliever, and in fact it generally adds to people's problems rather than relieving them. And certainly from a sleep point of view, it's got a very negative impact on sleep, so shouldn't be used as something to help you get to sleep, because it might do it in the first hour or so, but generally speaking you have a much more disturbed sleep after alcohol. So those are some of the kind of common tips for helping to manage stress. Meditation, as I mentioned there, is really something we should be all incorporating in our daily lives, because they are on the whole fairly busy and manic, and therefore taking time out to have a few minutes where we concentrate on our breathing and clearing our minds and so forth is a really good idea. And many of you may be already well practiced in meditation, but if not, one positive aspect of smartphones is that there are some great apps you can get that can help you to get into a good meditative state, and 3 of them are on here: Balance, I and Daxa use and like. Headspace gets well recommended, and Dr. Chatterjee himself highly recommends Calm. I think there are many others, but those are 3 I know about, and I know that they are extremely good. Balance has been doing a free trial for a whole year, which is well worth taking up. But I don't think the cost of any of these apps is too horrendous. They are all very useful. If somebody's mic needs to be muted, I don't know who it is. As I mentioned before, though, there are some, there's plenty of evidence to show that short-term stress, little bursts of stress, are really good for us, that we are designed to be able to cope. You know, caveman, we go back to the Paleolithic day, early man, mostly walked around, ambled about, surveying his surroundings, you know, working out where to maybe make a base, and looking at food opportunities and so forth, and took life fairly leisurely, but occasionally went for a real burst of running, which was often involved in chasing something for food. But our bodies are actually designed to have that kind of sudden burst of energy or adrenaline rush. And I absolutely hate running. So, you know, I would have to be sprinting from the tiger to induce me to have a run. I mean, I have run for buses and trains in the past, but, you know, I really do not like running. But you can actually induce that kind of adrenaline rush with things as simple as turning the shower on to cold for the last minute of your shower. It takes a bit of courage at the beginning, but people that do this regularly really feel a benefit. The alternative is to jump into a cold bath again. I'm okay at doing that if I've been in a sauna and I can jump into a plunge pool, but whether I'd actually run my bath freezing cold and then sit in it, take a leap of faith, I'm better with the shower option. But actually a hot bath, if you enjoy a hot bath, that does the same thing, because a hot bath will speed up your metabolism. Most of you will notice if you've taken a hot bath that your pulse races. So that can achieve the same effect. And then something that's getting very popular now is cold water swimming. Where people go into usually fresh water in lakes and reservoirs and so forth, and done in proper organized groups. But it's becoming extremely popular as being really beneficial for mental health as well as physical health. And if you want to know a bit more about that, Dr. Michael Mosley, who's you know, fairly eminent TV doctor who does lots of good documentaries, particularly around diet and lifestyle. He had a series on recently, which was a 21-day challenge for half a dozen people who'd all got health issues. And he took them cold water swimming. And I found it quite interesting that the ones who were least keen to do it loved it the most and were determined that they were going to carry on doing it thereafter. So I've put on here a few resources. The top 2 are Dr. Chatterjee's podcasts on stress. The normal podcasts are quite long. They're often run to well over an hour. So what he's tended to do is, with each of the really good podcasts he's done that have proved to be very popular, he's edited down to bite-sized versions so that people who haven't got time to listen to the whole thing can get the best out of them. So I've given you the link to both the main stress category, but also some of the bite-sized daily habits to help reduce stress. And then there was some really good YouTube talks on stress, and life apps is something I've just recently, a website I've just recently come across that's got some really good lifestyle information on, and it's got one on mindfulness, and it gives you a 31-day challenge that you can do to sort of really help to learn how to manage stress in your life. And then I've also given you the link there to the Channel 4 program that Dr. Michael Mosley did. And the good thing with catch up is you can whiz through it a bit more. So if you don't want to listen to all the diet stuff, it's well worth it. He's not quite on the low carb sort of regime that we're on, but it's pretty close. But what I liked about that program was all the lifestyle stuff that he introduced to the 6 challenges, and they all did really well on it. So it's a very useful program to watch to get ideas about how just simple changes in lifestyle can really help your overall health. So those are all the resources to go with what I've just been talking about. And that's really all I wanted to say about stress. But I've just got one more slide here, because on the last talk, somebody mentioned this book, How Not to Die, and had I read it? And I remembered it, and I thought, I have looked at it, but I didn't buy it. And so I went back and had a look, and now I know why I didn't buy it. Because the author of this one is very much into plant-based diet. And he rather buys into the idea that heart disease is caused by cholesterol and animal fats. And I feel he's a bit behind the times with that, because there is good evidence to show that it's the carbohydrates and the inflammation caused by the metabolic syndrome, the high blood sugar and the high insulin levels, that's driving heart disease. The cholesterol, as I mentioned last week, is involved as a sort of byproduct of the inflammatory process that's going on, and it's not the root cause. So I felt it's too misleading a book for me to be able to endorse it. There's probably some good stuff in it, and obviously having a healthy, fresh, plant-based diet is fine, but I don't like the implication that animal sourced food is unhealthy. If it's fresh, and particularly if it's free range or organically produced animal produce, it's extremely healthy. And therefore, you know, as I've said before, if you're vegetarian for religious or personal reasons, that's fine. But I don't want people to think they have to avoid meat because it's unhealthy, because that is simply not true. So I would not endorse this book. There are many, many other really good books out there on low carb lifestyles that I would feel would be a better one to spend your money on than that one. And that, I think, was all I was going to say tonight. So we can have a look at the questions, and I hope that made some kind of sense to you all. But I think, you know, it's sleep and stress management are easy things to just sort of constantly put up with. Poor sleep, feeling stressed, and I know from personal experience it's very easy to get wrapped up in looking after everybody else and not necessarily giving yourself time to manage your own stress, and it's definitely not helping with weight loss.
Thank you, Carolyn. That was really informative. We've got a question from Amanda. She says,
oh, hi Amanda.
She's wondering if you've got any tips to help with stress caused by physical pain.
Ooh, well, it all depends on the physical pain. Meditation can be very helpful. Breathing. I mean, I was a midwife in a former life, and I know that breathing exercises were extremely helpful. And, you know, I'm sad that nowadays a lot of mums don't get the antenatal care that they used to, because the breathing exercises could be really helpful. And you know, it works in all aspects of pain. Certainly when I've had various episodes of pain in other parts of my life, not talking about childbirth now, I do find being able to breathe through it can help. But obviously if it's constant, then that's not as much of a help. So I think meditation and learning to meditate so that you can take your mind off it. I mean, I don't know how you feel, Daxa. This might be something that you're learning about in your...
Also, she says, yes, it's a constant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just that meditation, kind of like breathing through the pain, but if it's constant, then that's not so easy, is it?
I mean, I'm assuming you've tried things like the TENS machines and heat pads and things. I don't know where the pain is, if it's multiple parts of the body or...
Oh yeah, I thought it was just easier just to speak.
Yes, it probably is. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, in the dark. Yeah, it's all over. It's constant.
Is it fibromyalgia type issues or?
It's nerve damage, severe arthritis in various places. It's all sorts of different things, and they're all very different pains. And I've injured myself on top of everything by walking too far in one session.
Oh.
So that was in June. So, and I know I have had cortisol problems before, but when somebody finally actually looked at my cortisol levels, they were so dangerously low, I had to go on steroids for 6 months. So I think I'd actually crashed my cortisol and adrenals completely. I can only assume that. No one's ever checked them since, and they checked to make sure the steroids had brought them back up to a normal level. But that was quite a few years ago now, about 5 years ago. So I've never checked.
You're not taking cortisol now?
No, I stopped that. It was probably about 4.5, 5 years ago.
Because some people, there are conditions where you naturally have lower levels, and therefore people have to take them on a low level regularly. So I mean, you've been low carb for quite a while, haven't you? And
3 years now, yeah.
And has that helped at all?
I'd say it's reduced the level of inflammation, and I've lost 13 stone so far.
My word, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Got a long way to go still.
Yeah.
But,
do you go keto, or are you just low carb?
No, I'm more keto.
Yeah, because
Really
I mean, I think it needs to be, keto seems to have the power to be the ultimate in anti-inflammatory. So you probably do need to go that low. But I think sadly it's a bit of everything really. And I think the meditation and, really working on the keto and continuing to lose the weight. Have they done your C-reactive protein?
I don't think so, no.
Well, I think it's worth going back to your GP and asking, because the CRP is a good marker of how inflamed you are, and you could monitor whether you're making improvements with that. But also I do think they ought to be monitoring your cortisol, because if you've had that sort of problem before.
I know. Well, the thing is, the consultant was at Derby Hospital, and I'm in Nottingham, and it was to do with, I mean, I could barely walk at that point, as in not just through the pain, but I almost, like, my brain didn't know I had legs anymore. I was I was like a zombie, so I couldn't tell my legs to move. So when
Did you have some kind of viral infection, or was this?
No, I think it was, all this is from when I had my gallbladder removed. Literally overnight I became disabled from the middle of my body, and I've never been right since. Just 13 years ago now. And I gained 15 stone in about a year. And all the doctors just said it's my fault. I brought it on myself. It's all in my head. There was nothing wrong with me. Nothing happened. Nothing to see here. Kind of go away. So it was when I finally got referred to see a gastroenterologist, I think, at Derby, and I didn't want to see anyone at Nottingham anymore, because they seemed to be very biased against what happened with my surgery. So, and she was kind of like horrified that no one tested my cortisol, but she expected my cortisol, as I now understand, to be really high. So when I had the bloods taken at hospital, and before I even got back to Nottingham, I had a phone call saying you need to come back immediately because the cortisol was so dangerously low. I had to go immediately on steroids, but she was really annoyed by this, because she said, no, your cortisol can't possibly be low, because you'd be really thin if your cortisol was that low. And so I said, well, could it not be that it's been so high for so long that it's crashed? And she said, it's highly unlikely. And then she refused to see me again. So I had the steroids for about 5 or 6 months. And like I said, the GPs just aren't interested. My GPs are so anti-keto and low carb. So I've got no medical support on that front, It's
probably something we ought to sort of pursue more privately, Amanda, just because I'm aware of we're sort of
sorry.
No, but it's more just because we're not here to do consultations, but I appreciate your problem, and I really do want to sympathize. I mean, the frustration I would have is that and it's expensive, but you possibly need to see a lifestyle specialist.
I can't do it. I haven't worked for 13 years. I mean, I live alone, so it's not possible. But because I know that I've had a cortisol problem, I'm pretty sure that especially from my injury that I caused myself by trying to do more, that I feel like it must be elevated again, because I've not lost any weight now since June at all. And I'm
tried changing GP practices?
Oh, there's only a choice of 2, and the first one nearly killed me. That's when I was with them initially. They've had me on so much more.
Maybe we can have a little chat on WhatsApp, Amanda, and bat a few ideas around. But it's so frustrating when I mean, as you know from, I think, because you joined Joe McCormack's group as well, don't you? There are some great ones around, but it's very frustrating for you. I'm just picking up on 1 or 2 people's questions related to our conversation here, and somebody's asking why you had to take cortisol supplements if cortisol's bad. Let me just make sure everybody's clear. Cortisol is a hormone that our bodies naturally produce. It has got a very important part in our overall metabolism, but it's meant to be there as a response to that little bit of short, sharp stress that we might experience through various activities in the day, but it's not meant to be at high levels for long periods of time. But it's also bad if we don't have it, because it means we can't appropriately respond to things that happen during the course of the day. So somebody that has a naturally very low, or seems to be no longer able to make their own cortisol, has to be given a baseline amount. There are 1 or 2 congenital conditions where people, children are diagnosed and they have to just have cortisol forever as a drug. And then things can happen. And I suspect something has gone on physiologically with poor old Amanda here and caused her adrenals to not be coping quite as well as they should. So that's why she was given it. So I hope that answers Nishila's question. So are there any other questions in there?
No, nothing else is coming up. Oh, somebody suggested Reiki, Amanda.
Yeah, I mean, any of those types of programs can help, because what you're kind of almost describing there, Amanda, is a bit like the sort of post-viral syndrome, ME scenario, a fibromyalgia, all of those things. They're all a bit kind of vague in terms of pinpointing what the problem is. And keto does seem to be very good for a lot of them. And obviously you have made some fantastic progress, and I just have to hope that it will continue, but I wish I had somebody taking better care of you.
Yeah, I must say that I don't think, in all honesty, I don't think I'd still be here if I hadn't made the changes I made. And I'm being quite frank and honest there.
Yeah.
My GP did tell me 4 years ago I'd be dead by 50 if I didn't have bariatric surgery, and I didn't, and I'm this year and I'm still here.
Really frustrates me when that's their answer to it all. But
I know,
you know, GPs are starting to learn now that managing food, particularly with the low carb keto side of things, and real food, does seem to improve a lot. Somebody else, I mean, gallbladder surgery shouldn't cause such major problems. Amanda's been incredibly unlucky. Lots of people have had their gallbladders out, and it doesn't cause such horrendous life-changing things. I just wonder if, I don't know, to say.
It's a tough one, but I mean, regardless of that, I think for me it's just I'm aware I'm pretty sure my cortisol is higher right now, and it's frustrating because I used to meditate, and but I find that very difficult now because the pain, some of the pains in the middle of my body, I find it very difficult to get centered and relax to even take 10 minutes, and I can't do yoga or anything like that anymore, So I do find it frustrating, but I do think keto has been a lifesaver.
I think so. I think it'll do some good. I mean, clearly it's a big problem, and therefore you're chipping away at it rather than wow, this is a kind of it's not an overnight cure, but hopefully it's helping. So I'm just spotting somebody else is saying here, thyroid. Do you want to talk about that, Daxa? Somebody said, do you recommend to go on keto if suffering from thyroid?
I'll talk about that. I have studied about this, and I also have a thyroid issue myself, and they don't recommend that you go totally low carb. Low carb, yes, but not necessarily keto, because of the way that the hormones change from, is it T3 to T4, Carolyn?
T4 to T3.
Thank you, Amanda.
I've also got Hashimoto's, that's why.
Do you want to speak about, I mean, because you've obviously got the Hashimoto's and you are keto, and I've got Hashimoto's and I'm not keto. Well,
I have found through experience that what I do is I was very hardcore keto for the first probably 6 months. And then, but I kept researching the whole time, and then came across the whole conversion of T4 to T3 and how that can be problematic in low carb. So what I tend to do is I'm hardcore keto, generally 1 meal a day, 5 days a week, but then I try and make sure 2 days a week I have slightly increased carbs and very low fat on those days. So I'll have like really lean protein, and I might have some lentils, and I found that that's helping me. I don't know, my weight loss, it's obviously slowed my weight loss down a bit, but I think I'm healthier in all the other aspects that my thyroid is, responsible for. So, but again, it's that whole thing of learning it in the dark a bit. But I've found that's I'm trying to find a balance, I guess. So, you know, because I would love to do keto constantly, to be honest. I feel the best on that.
Yeah.
But it's, again, there's so many other elements to health and weight loss, isn't there?
Yeah, and it is, you have got to sort of tweak it to suit yourself. And I think we change as well, because I kind of lose a stone at a time, and then I plateau, and I have to do something that's slightly different, like go on to one meal a day, or you know, I do have to keep changing. And I think that's the message to everybody else out there listening, is that, you know, the low carb as a principle is sound and it's healthy. It's not going to do you any harm, but we are all slightly different. So some people find that they need to be having a slightly more protein and less fat. Other people can do the sort of reasonable amount of protein and high fat and very low carb. And, you know, it really does take a bit of tweaking. If you've got a lot of weight to lose and you've been eating a very high carb diet, you will undoubtedly lose weight at the beginning simply by dropping carbs. But then a lot of us hit a plateau, and then we have to start. But usually by then we kind of understand a bit more about the whole nutrition sort of side of things, and we start having to tweak and play around with what we eat to help ourselves get going again on the weight loss or other symptomatic relief, depending on what your problems might be. For diabetics, low carb undoubtedly helps you to control your blood sugars, because it's the carbohydrates that break down to sugar that are causing your sugar spikes. So going low carb will absolutely help your diabetes. It may be that you also would hit a bit of a wall with weight loss if you've got a lot of weight to lose, but you will definitely lose quite a bit of weight at the beginning simply by changing your diet. But the thyroid question is, if it's an inflammatory problem that's causing it, we know that low carb and keto are really good for anti-inflammatory, so they will help. You know, we're telling you to eat real healthy food, so there's nothing dangerous that's going on with low carb. It's you know, we're encouraging you to eat the best. So, you know, some doctors sort of make it sound like when we're telling people not to eat carbs, as if we're poisoning you. And it's quite the opposite. It's the carbs that are poisoning a lot of people in the metabolic way. That's the problem. But it's because a lot of doctors, unfortunately, don't necessarily understand nutrition as well as they ought to, but they're not trained very well in nutrition at all.
Just
I can't see.
there's not.
Please come with a little chat on how to lose weight. So this is somebody, I'm guessing, Tajinder, are you new tonight?
Yes, I am new.
Okay, and are you diabetic?
No, I'm not diabetic. No.
Okay, you just want to lose weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Means I have got thyroid and I've got hiatus hernia. As I said, my gallbladder has been removed.
Yeah. Now, you can still eat fat, even though you've got no gallbladder, because you will still be producing the bile. It's just that you don't have a little store of it. So some people take a little while to adjust if they start to increase the fat component of their diet when they have no gallbladder. But it's you can still have fat. And what we're recommending is that you become aware that everything that's carbohydrate is broken down to sugar. And they are the calories, if you like. We don't really like counting calories the way that we work, because every type of food is very different as to how the body deals with it. And you want to concentrate on eating foods that are nutritious, that will actually give something to your body. And carbohydrates simply don't. They may give you some energy, but you can get energy from the protein and most definitely the fat that you eat in healthy food. So our approach is to try and reduce the carbs, which means the rice, the pasta, the breads, cereals. The typical breakfast cereals are just packed with sugar. So it's trying to make every meal feature healthy protein. Which, do you eat meat?
No, I'm a vegetarian.
Vegetarian. Okay. Do you eat eggs and cheese and dairy?
Not really, no.
That starts to make it
basically
quite difficult.
I think it's all protein goes from lentils, maybe.
Yeah, lentils have got some protein, but you would need nuts and seeds and things to help bump up your protein, because if you're if you're deficient in protein, this will not be helping your overall metabolism and your health. So you need to be getting your energy from healthy fats, which in your case,
and maybe like the protein shakes and stuff. Can we have those? No.
Well, you can, but what we're after is real food, as opposed to things that have got ingredients in them that are not necessarily healthy for you and useful to your body. And anything that you buy that's pre-made like those will have ingredients that are not going to be terribly healthy for you. So plenty of vegetables, and a big variety of vegetables are the best. And then lentils are an important, they've got carbs in them, but they're an important element for a vegetarian diet because you will get protein there. Chickpeas, beans, pulses, all of those. You should have a big variety. Perhaps Daxa, because you understand the...
I was just going to say, what about tofu? Because you've mentioned tofu in the past, haven't you? And
yes, tofu and the, what's the other one?
Tempeh?
Yes, tempeh. They are very good sources of protein for vegetarians. Do you eat either of those?
Sorry, what is tempeh?
Tempeh is another form of mature fermented soy. It's along the same lines of tofu, and you probably get it in similar outlets to tofu, but it's very concentrated. It's very high protein.
So, these things I've just been like, my son has been personal training and he gets these things. You get in Tesco like plant-based soya protein and all those, or are they good or no?
We don't like too much soy because soy's got all sorts of issues with it, not least the environment and how it's grown, but also a lot of soy is not necessarily great.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody's just put, Amanda, thank you. I haven't got round to looking at Michael Mosley's protein shakes that I know he does to go with his fast 800 diet, but they probably are the least likely to contain nasties. So the shakes are a useful adjunct for people when they're busy, but we don't like people to rely on them. It's, if you're vegetarian, we need you to find a way of eating, for life.
Yeah, basically it's very little the protein powder, but it's like blueberries and walnuts and nuts, just adding more of
but
it.
If you're blitzing those, then you're basically destroying a lot of the fiber and a lot of the helpful nutrition in the fruit. We prefer you to eat your fruit, not drink it.
Okay.
So for breakfast, for instance, do you eat yogurt?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So the 10% fat Greek yogurt is really helpful because it provides quite a filling base to add.
Yeah, I usually get phage.
Yeah.
I think the Greek. Yeah.
That sort of yogurt for breakfast with the fruit in it, but the whole fruit, not mashed up.
Yeah,
it's very helpful breakfast. And then you need to form your other meals with as much vegetable and your lentils or chickpeas or nuts, and try and keep the rice and the bread to an absolute minimum, because it's those carbohydrates that are going to be driving your weight. And if we can eliminate those, you will find you should lose weight quite reasonably. So I hope that helps, but I would highly recommend you perhaps go back and look at some of our earlier presentations.
Definitely, yeah, I'll do that. Thank you so much.
A lot more about the diet in there. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Somebody's asking about
traditional Indian bread recipe replacements on keto. It's hard to find them, so I don't know if anyone...
You're talking about chapatis and naan bread.
Naan bread, I think, yeah.
I think that I'll have to put it back on the WhatsApp group, but I did find a keto vegan Instagram account, that the girl that does a lot of quite good bread alternatives, and she's done things like, she won't call them naans, pittas, because they're not, but they will take the place of those things. And she uses things like almond flour and ground linseed and the sort of things that we use in low carb breads. So it's a matter of adapting and trying to sort of have an open mind to when you make yourselves a nice curry or whatever. Do you absolutely have to have rice with it? As Daxa said before, it's very hard when it forms a main part of your cultural diet that to completely remove it, but maybe not have it every day, or if you do have it, have just the tiniest little spoonful. But you can make really good accompaniments to curries with cauliflower, broccoli, blitzed up, made into really nice cauliflower rice. There's a really good podcast that is done by a chap who he goes under the title of UK Low Carb. And he's got Katie Caldesi at the moment, who's an Italian, well, she's a British, but she's married to an Italian chef. They're both chefs. And she's doing some videos of making her recipes. And I know this week she's done cauliflower couscous, which is very similar to cauliflower rice. And it makes a really, really good base to put a curry on. That's what I do all the time now, and I don't miss rice at all. And shredded cabbage and greens, courgettes, which are highly in season at the moment. Use a little spiralizer to make those into sort of noodles, and that gives you a base to put your whatever it is, for a curry or a bolognese or whatever onto. And it's just as nice. It's psychological that you need the rice, and it's psychological and cultural because it's always gone together. But you do not. There isn't a law that says you have to have them together. So it's just a matter of trying to get your head around what's the nutritious bit of this meal, what's the bit my body needs of this meal, and which are the bits I can do without, and obviously the carbs are the bit we're telling you can do without. So it's about tweaking it so that the majority of what you're eating is that healthy protein and naturally occurring fats, and the least amount is the carbs that are not really going to do your body any good. Katie Caldesi is the name of the chef, but you'll find it on, well, again, the easiest thing to do is I'll put the links onto the WhatsApp afterwards.
I think Gita Shah has got a question. Gita Ben, can you please?
Yeah, maybe it's easier if she asks it now because I'm losing my place on this list.
Hi. Oh, yes, I am diabetic, and of course, I do need a breakfast, and I always have a cereal, milk, and sunflower seeds with it. For years, I've been having all this, but what kind of bread which has got a very low carb and good for diabetes? What kind? Sourdough bread?
No, well, we would prefer you stay clear of all of the wheat-based breads. So the little podcast with Katie Caldesi that I've mentioned, the first one she did is a really easy to make low carb bread roll made with almond flour. Do you eat eggs?
I used to eat eggs until now. It's just for 6 months or something, I have stopped eating eggs for religious purposes.
Okay, you can't use them as an ingredient then?
As an ingredient, sometimes I do use it, yeah.
Because
for the cakes.
That particular bread recipe unfortunately has eggs in it, but otherwise the keto vegan website I mentioned, which I'll put the links on the WhatsApp group. She obviously makes quite a lot of different breads which won't use eggs and so forth, so they're a bit harder to make when you've not got eggs. I have to say eggs are a great mainstay for baking, but it can be done. But what I would suggest to you for the moment is, instead of that cereal, would you eat yogurt?
Yeah, I can eat yogurt.
Yeah. So the Greek yogurt that we've just been talking about, the high fat Greek yogurt with your sunflower seeds and some fruit in it, that's a really good option instead of the cereal. Much better for you than the cereal with diabetes. And I know the NHS tells you to eat porridge, but we say no. It all breaks down to sugar and it won't do your diabetes any good. So the yogurt and the berries and the seeds is a good breakfast for you.
All right, thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
There's Mayuri as well, Mayuri Lakani. Mayuri Ben?
Yes. Hello, Caroline.
Hi.
can a low carb diet help with IBS?
Yes. I think you have to go carefully with IBS, no matter what way you're eating, because there will be some things that will upset you and some things that don't. So we're obviously suggesting you eat plenty of vegetables, and some people have some types of vegetables that seem to irritate their bowel more than others. So it's just a matter of experimenting and keeping a food diary, maybe, so that when you eat, you can make a note of what you've eaten and how you feel maybe the next day, and work out which vegetables perhaps upset you more than others. But obviously what we're recommending is the protein and fat elements, which tend to be less of an issue.
Mhm.
Are you vegetarian?
I am, yes.
Yeah. So, you know, some pulses may upset, you know, it's the fiber, and there's all sorts of different types of fiber in different plant-based foods. And some people seem to be particularly sensitive. Things like onions and that family can really upset some people, whereas other people tolerate those very well. And something else, I mean, I cannot eat artichokes. Jerusalem artichokes give me physical pain. So I see well clear of them. Whereas, you know, there's probably vegetables I can eat that another person with IBS can't eat. So, you know, it's the low carb element is neither here nor there, really. It's about learning which plants your gut will tolerate, and, you know, trying to still get the balance of protein and fat rather than a lot of carbs.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that makes some kind of sense.
Yes.
So it's got to be quite individual.
Yes, and seeing how you react to each food.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, particularly if you're introducing new vegetables, because you're trying to expand your vegetables rather than eating the carbohydrates. So, you know, if you eat something new and the next day you're feeling bloated and uncomfortable, then that's probably that new vegetable that's done it, and that'll be on the list of no-goes. But it's trial and error, really.
Okay, fine. I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Can you recommend couscous made from which supermarket, please?
No, the couscous itself is still a grain, so we'd prefer not. Say the chef I was talking about, who's demonstrating making something similar to couscous but using cauliflower. Any grains, unfortunately, are carbohydrates and they get broken down to sugar. So on the low carb diet, we would suggest avoiding all of those. And, you know, it's making your own food as well, rather than buying it.
Yeah. So when you were mentioning about the chef, Katie, making the couscous cauliflower, it was actually cauliflower, wasn't it?
Yes, yes. She wasn't making it.
So
with
I feel that's what
yes,
maybe
that's possibly I've misled you there. She's making a version that would replace couscous the way, you know, you might use couscous in a meal. She's showing you how you can use cauliflower to do that instead.
Yeah.
Somebody else is asking about, can you be on low carb but follow it certain days rather than everyday meals? If you're going to be low carb, you really need to be low carb fairly consistently if you want to lose weight. And if you're a diabetic, you need to be low carb as much of the time as you possibly can, because diabetes is basically an inability to handle things that are broken down to sugar well. So you want to avoid any foods that get broken down to sugar as much as possible. If it's just a weight loss journey you're on, then obviously if you eat carbs on some days, it's probably going to slow down your weight loss. And also it helps if you want to get the maximum impact from eating low carb, then you really need to be consistent. However, what Daxa and I both say is when you're starting, can be a big change for a lot of people to make. So we would recommend tackling maybe one meal at a time, and breakfast is often a good one because a lot of breakfasts are very carb orientated with cereals and things. So that's a good one to change first, and then start having a look at the other meals. And the most important thing is to have good main meals and to leave out the snacks, because the snacks are what are giving us a lot of problems, because they tend to be more processed and more carbohydrate orientated. So it's sort of easing yourself into an attitude that I just eat my 3 meals a day, I do not have snacks, and then with each meal gradually changing them to be lower carb. And it might be that you never completely give up carbs, but that you reduce dramatically the amount that you're having. And if you are currently overweight and you are eating a lot of carbohydrate and you can reduce your carbs dramatically, you will see a weight loss, I can guarantee it. But you've got to make sure that you're replacing the carbs with protein and natural fats. So if you're vegetarian, that would be ghee if you're able to eat dairy products, or olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, those naturally occurring oils, as opposed to vegetable oil and the seed oils that have to be manufactured using industrialized processes. So you need to have fat with your vegetables when you're leaving out the carbs, because that fat's what's going to satisfy you and keep you full for longer, along with the protein that's in your meal. And as vegetarians, you have to work quite hard at making sure you're getting protein, because especially if you don't eat eggs and cheese, which are the easiest source for vegetarians to get from. So you've got to work hard to make sure you're getting enough pulses or nuts and seeds to give you adequate protein, and that will fill you up.
We've got somebody called Radhi who would like to join the WhatsApp group and would like to know how.
Okay, well, Panna, you're the administrator, aren't you? So if you make sure Panna has your mobile number, she can add you.
Is that okay, Radhi?
You can put it on the chat now, and I can take your number down. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it privately to Panna.
Yeah.
Just pick her name from the list. And then we've got Ranju Ben, who's asking, is it okay to have gram flour? And I think she asked later about, is it okay to have a little bit?
Well, again, I mean, gram flour is flour, unfortunately. So it's back to what we've been saying, that, you know, as small an amount as you can manage. So, you know, it's really looking to adjust gradually your everyday diet to being as low carb as possible. So at the beginning, you know, may want to use a bit, but just try to have smaller portions of those carby bits of the meals, and replace the majority with plants and the proteins.
I'll just add something to the gram flour thing. So I had some visitors recently, and I made some courgette fritters. And I put some spices in there. I put some almond flour in there, but obviously without eggs it's not going to stick. So I did sprinkle a little bit of gram flour, but it was just a little bit, and I just shallow fried them, and that's because I had family and it was a treat. So there are obviously times when you will make things, you know, and everyone liked them, and it was because there was already some almond flour and it didn't need a lot of gram flour. So it's like, at least if you can't avoid it completely, try to minimize it. Ranju also wants to ask, is it okay to have a little bit of low sugar granola?
Well, Daxa and I would both say it's quite easy to make your own granola that's completely sugar-free. And we have in the past, and I'm sure we can again, put the recipes that we use onto the WhatsApp, because it really isn't difficult to make. Any of the ones that you buy, even though they're saying they're low sugar, they've usually got stuff in them that's not great. So it's just as easy to make your own, and then it's fine. And that goes really nicely with some of that nice Greek yogurt for breakfast. Or it can be, if you do have one of those days where you've got the munchies before your dinner, and you really got to have something to eat, then it's quite a healthy little snack to have, much better than for reaching for the biscuits or chocolate or anything else. I can see one there about beetroot. All of the root vegetables will be higher carb than leafy vegetables that grow above ground. So any of the things, not just leafy vegetables, cauliflowers and courgettes, and anything that grows above ground will tend to have less sugar in them, because the roots, the root vegetables are, you know, the source of energy for the plant. So they tend to be the higher carb veg. Now, if you're vegetarian, you're really going to need to use as many different vegetables as you can. And therefore, we're not saying you can't eat these veg, but you've got to be mindful of the ones that are the higher carb. So if you're trying to balance your plate and you've got a load of beetroot on it, then you really don't want to have any other carbs on it. But again, a little bit is fine. And beetroot is a very healthy thing in its own right. But if you're counting carbs, you've got to be aware that it will be one of the higher carb. Sweet potato is the same. Unfortunately, sweet potato is just as bad as white potato when it comes to carbohydrates. Might have marginally more vitamins and things in it, but you've got to use sweet potatoes with caution if you're diabetic or if you're really trying to lose weight. Again, a little bit every now and then does no harm. It's getting the balance. We talk about 80-20 really, so 80% of the time trying to have a really good low carb approach, and 20% of the time for special occasions or because you've got visitors or whatever, then you might, you know, bend a bit more towards slightly higher carb. But yeah, sweet potatoes, I think, got a bit of a reputation for being better than, but unfortunately they're not really better than white potatoes. Squash, if you're looking at the orangey type vegetables, butternut squash and any of the squashes are much lower in carbs, so they're very useful to use, you know. And get creative. Again, there's lots and lots of brilliant recipes on the internet now. If you go onto YouTube and just Google, or not Google on YouTube, but search on YouTube for low carb recipes, if you've got a particular vegetable you want to make something with, and just say low carb whatever, you'll find no end of wonderful videos showing you how to make dishes with those vegetables.
And that can be said for granola recipes as well, because somebody's asked, you know, what ingredients how do we make granola, or what ingredients do we use?
Both our recipes came from the internet, didn't they? And they're mainly nuts and seeds mixed with a little bit of something to bind them, and then you bake them just for 15 minutes or so. But yeah, nuts and seeds mainly.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I also put desiccated coconut in, or toasted coconut flakes. I have coconut
chips, what they don't have that the bought ones will have are oats. An awful lot of the bought ones, even if they say they're low sugar, all they mean on the packet when they say low sugar is they haven't added sugar, but they'll still have oats, which they forget to tell you break down to sugar. So our recipes won't have oats in them, but they'll have the nuts and seeds, and they're really tasty. And I add things like, I buy freeze-dried fruits and add those just a little bit, just to give it a bit of colour and a little bit of extra oomph. You only need a spoonful and a bit of yogurt, and you've got a really nice breakfast. Celeriac, yes, thank you, Amanda. Celeriac's a really good exchange for potatoes. Celeriac's a very useful vegetable. You can use it like to make chips almost. You can make celeriac mash, or just bake celeriac, you know, and get creative with vegetables. Most vegetables can be sauteed or roasted, and that addition of a little bit of healthy fats and some spices just elevates them to another plane. You know, they just become a thing of their own. I mean, I'm really into baked roasted cauliflower and broccoli. Toss them in a bit of olive oil and add some cumin and coriander, and then roast them, and they're absolutely delicious. I never boil a vegetable now.
Yeah, I tend to roast a lot of my vegetables. And it's only with some dishes that I'll have like steamed cauliflower or steamed broccoli. But it's a very rare thing. There's a question here: how healthy is it to eat cheese?
Well, again, if you're going low carb, cheese is very healthy, because it's dairy has got lots of positives. I mean, some people don't tolerate the lactose in milk, so if you're lactose intolerant, then obviously it's not so great. But cheese has got good protein and healthy fat content, and it can fill you up. So again, it's a very useful if you are desperate for something to eat before a meal. then a couple of squares of cheddar or something is going to help take away that craving for food, and you're giving your body some nutrients as opposed to just some rubbish. But also cheese is very useful for adding flavour and oomph to food. Baked vegetables with a sprinkling of cheese over the top can be really tasty. So yeah, cheese is fine, because if you're not eating the carbs that are giving your body lots of useless energy, then the fat in the cheese is going to be useful to your body. The problem is when you have carbs and fat, your body will use carbs first before the fat, but if you're not having the carbs, your body will utilize the fat that you're eating, and therefore fat doesn't make you fat, it's the carbohydrates that make you fat.
That's
And
true.
are the cheese vegetarians? Majority of them are vegetarians, aren't they?
They are these days.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
can easily buy
They're
vegetarian.
certainly
cheese.
labelled, and you can work out whether they are or not. But
Yeah.
yes, most of them use the vegetarian rennet. And cheese is, particularly for ladies, it's very useful because of the calcium content. And animal fats are healthy. Vegetable fats that aren't, I love the way they call them vegetable, because they're not from vegetables at all, but the cheap industrialized oils are not healthy at all. There's
a question about quinoa instead of rice.
Quinoa's not really much better than rice, unfortunately. It's still a grain that I know it's got quite a high protein content. So for vegans, we have to compromise. But all of them, all of them will have packaging that will give you the nutritional breakdown, and you'll be able to see per 100 grams how much carbs you're getting, and you just have to be aware of that so that when you're planning a meal, you know what you're getting.
And portion size, is that important on low carb?
Well, it comes down to that sometimes for some of us. When our weight loss stalls, often, as I say, when you first make a big change, if you've been eating a lot of carbs and you stop and you're eating that healthy diet, you will lose weight. But if you plateau, then one of the first things we look at is portion size, because it might be that you've got away with it for so long with the big portions, and then in order to continue losing weight, you need to. But having said that, it is supposedly much harder to overeat on protein and fat than it is to overeat carbs. So if your meal is well balanced with protein and fat, then your appetite should hopefully be reasonably well regulated so that you don't overeat. But some of us who have big appetites have had to learn that no, we really shouldn't be eating that much, and we don't need to eat that much. Again, it's often all in our head. So using a smaller plate can psychologically help us to accept smaller portions and realize that we are full, and not, I think some of us are brought up to eat everything on the plate and we eat beyond when we're actually feeling full. So it's again learning to listen to your body and learning when actually you are getting the signal that you're full, and stop then. And you'll then learn not to put too much on your plate so that you're not wasting food. But it comes down to a bit of self-regulation, and portion control can be necessary for those of us that are trying to lose weight. But if you're just simply eating because of diabetes and you're not particularly worried about losing weight, then you eat as much as you need to fill you up, and as long as it's low carb, you will come to no harm. Amanda's put a good point here that actual vegan cheese, as opposed to normal cheese made with vegetarian rennet, vegan cheese is often, as many processed vegan dishes are, they're made of an awful lot of refined, ultra-processed ingredients. So if you are vegan, you need to be careful if you're buying something off the shelf, because very often the ingredients are not healthy at all. How much carbs per 100 should we? Right. Well, we recommend that a low carb diet is really anything under 100 grams of carbohydrate a day. And if you're wanting to go really low carb, then you need to get under 50. So really, you know, you're looking for food that has as little carbs as possible. So, you know, I would not want to eat anything really that's got more than 30%, so 30 grams per 100. And I'm really looking for foods that have got less than 10 grams of carbs per 100. But it's again down to just what you're trying to achieve and what you're, you know, if you've got a medical condition such as diabetes, then your total for the day shouldn't really be any more than 100 grams. So the lower the carb content of the food you're eating, the more of it you can eat. That makes sense.
Yeah. Ben's got a question.
I'm going to go back to cortisol. Is it worth taking, well, no, cortisol, would it help for losing hair?
You shouldn't, I mean, taking things like that shouldn't be done unless you're under medical supervision, because they should be monitoring what your body's doing. Cortisol is not something you can buy as a supplement. It's a hormone that we make. And therefore, if you're worried about that, then you ought to get the doc to check your levels and check that, you know, whether you are deficient or not. But it's not something we should be messing around with.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Somebody's asked, can they snack on pistachios between meals if they are hungry?
I'm fairly certain, again, I can't, off the top of my head, I'm fairly certain pistachios are quite high in carbs, because I love them, and I think I was devastated to find out that they're probably not one of the best nuts to eat in large quantities. The best nuts are almonds and walnuts and pecans.
Hazelnuts, maybe?
Hazelnuts aren't bad. I think Brazil nuts aren't bad. I can't eat Brazil nuts. They do not agree with me, but I think Brazil nuts are not too bad. But again, if you either got a packet of the nuts, it'll tell you what the carb content is, or just Google nutritional content, or nutritional content of the nut it is you're interested in, and you'll get it. But I know the best ones are almonds, walnuts, pecans, hazelnuts.
I've just looked it up. So on the Diet Doctor website, so cashews 22, I think this is in grams or something.
Yeah.
Pistachios are 15, whereas pecans are 4.
Yeah.
Brazils are 4.
Yeah.
Walnuts are 7. Almonds are 9. Hazelnuts are 7. So yeah.
Yeah. Anything under 10 will be better than the pistachio of 15. So, you know, again, if you're vegetarian and they're useful to you, but you've just got to be aware of the content. And, you know, we don't want you madly counting everything, but while you're getting used to it, it's useful to make a note of these things. Because again, particularly if you're trying to lose weight and you're not losing weight, it could be that when you look at the total you've had in a day, you've gone way over what we're recommending. But yeah, Brazil nuts are very good, but if you can eat them, that's great. I can't, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, somebody's also looked up, not Brazil nuts, said only 1 gram carb per 30 grams.
Yeah, which is probably about 4 per 100. Yeah. So as a small snack, and I mean Brazil nuts, they're quite chunky, so you know that they're a good snack to have because it takes you a while to eat them. The smaller the nuts and the quicker you can eat them, the more you can get through.
But also with Brazil nuts, there's selenium in them, and you can overdose on selenium, so please don't overeat the Brazil nuts. They reckon 2 or 3 a day is more than adequate.
And that probably would be 30 grams, wouldn't it? Because they'll weigh quite a bit each. And you know, be aware of that. You need to initially weigh your portions, because it's easy to take a handful of nuts and underestimate how much you've got there. And you know, energy wise, we try not to talk about calories, but at the end of the day, the amount of energy you're taking in is important if you're trying to lose weight. And energy wise, nuts got quite a lot of energy because they're quite high fat. Good fat, but still quite high fat. So, you know, use them cautiously as a good snack, but don't go mad on them.
So my comment about the selenium has got somebody worried. Selenium is very good, and it is very
good for hair.
Yes, but not if you have too much. And this is where sometimes medicating or not medicating, supplementing can be dangerous, because we just don't really have the knowledge, and something that can be good for us can also be bad for us when we have too much of it.
Yeah.
You know, and so yeah, I'd recommend maybe just 2 Brazil nuts, 3 maximum a day. I wouldn't have more than that.
Because those sort of elements you only need traces of. So selenium is good for hair, but you don't need to eat loads of nuts to get the benefit.
Yeah, and then too much of it just makes causes problems in the body.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Is that it? Have we run out of questions now?
Chickpeas. I've had a question directly sent to me. Can we snack on roasted chickpeas? It's an Asian snack specifically.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a skin on, and they're very moreish. But again, I assume chickpeas are generally high carb.
They are.
So the snack.
They're a good source of protein for vegans, but they have got carbs in them. So, you know, again, it's all about how much you're having over the course of a day. So if you're using them as a snack, that could be quite risky, because you could be pushing your carb levels up. You know, good old vegetables like celery and raw carrots chopped up, peppers. Those are the sort of things that's useful to have in the fridge for munching on if you really feel you've got to eat, because they're not going to give you too much in the way of carbs at all. And if you eat eggs, hard-boiled eggs can be a very useful snack, because they really do fill you up. And you know, if you're hard boiling them for a dish and do a few extra and you've got them in the fridge, then they're there as a grab and go snack. Olives can be useful.
Olives are
as
really
a snack.
useful.
Yeah. Well, I expect it's 9:30.
I think that is.
Questions have calmed down, so it's probably a good time to stop. Any special requests for next time, do you think, as a result of tonight? What do you think might be a good topic to plan for next time?
Any suggestions from the participants?
Yeah, I think, Nita, that's a very good idea. We should devise an Indian diet. Thanks, Amanda. Menopause, good foods, etc. Okay. Well, maybe we should look at sort of like the macro and micronutrients and influence on the hormones. Does that sound reasonable? What do you think, Daxa?
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable. Yeah,
I think so too.
Yeah. Okay. I'll write it down this time. I had to go and watch myself on the recording to remember what I said I'd talk about today. Talking about a postmenopausal brain.
Even I had to go back to remind myself what we're going to talk about today.
No.
Sorry, Caroline, can you just clarify this for me, please? Panna was talking about cortisol and hair loss. Can you just explain? And cortisol is a stress hormone. How does it relate? I mean, does it relate to hair loss or any?
I honestly couldn't tell you off the top of my head if that's a simple cause, but stress can lead to hair loss. And therefore, there probably is something in the whole mechanism, the physiology of the effect that cortisol is having if it's in high levels that might, but I'll look that up, because off the top of my head, pardon the pun, I'm not sure if it's directly related.
Yeah, I was just a bit confused as to why you would want to take cortisol, really, because it's not a good hormone to have anyway in your body.
Not in the wrong amounts. As I say, it is, in a sense, all the hormones we have are there for a purpose. It's when they get out of sync with each other that we have problems. So we all need some cortisol, and if our levels are low, it needs to be replaced. But if it's replaced artificially, it can't respond automatically in the way that our body's designed to do. So it's all, the way that hormones work, the whole endocrine system in the body is very complex. It all works on negative feedback mechanisms and all sorts of things. So it's much more complex than just swallowing a pill. But if somebody is deficient, then the only way we can replace it is usually with a certain dose every day, which at least keeps the sort of baseline. But no, I don't know whether it's directly related. I think Panna, did you get the idea from someone that cortisol might be responsible for hair loss?
No, I was questioning you because I have lost quite a lot of hair just recently. It's a handful every day.
Oh, me too. So I think it's something that happens at a certain age. It's not just the men that lose hair. I think we just start off with more, so we don't go bald.
I've just found an article on the web called "Stress, Hair Loss, and the Cortisol Connection." Now, obviously, I haven't got time to read it, but I'll put it in our WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe there is then.
Yeah. So I don't know what that's going to say, but there is something there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I'm concerned as well, because I'm recently getting a lot of hair loss too.
Yeah.
So this is quite worrying, really. And when you speak to the doctors, they just say it's age now. So
no, well, I mean, I think it is a fairly common problem, but a good lifestyle, and particularly a really good nutrient dense diet, is the best way to cope with an awful lot of the things that happen through age. So don't panic about it, but we'll have a little look. Oh, yeah. Somebody's asking, can we talk about healthy diet for a man with prostate cancer as well, please? Oh gosh, that's taking us in a different direction. I mean, the keto diet, there's a lot of research going on, just to say quickly, there's a lot of research going on looking at keto and cancer with very positive, results that all cancers thrive on sugar, so all cancer tumours, and therefore a healthy but low carb diet does seem to be quite beneficial. But the cancer, thank you, Amanda, you're full of all the wonderful answers. Jason Fung, who's written an awful lot of books about both obesity, fasting, has also written a book on the cancer code. And in fact, I'm going to listen to a podcast this week from another chap who's done a lot of research into cancer and diet. So I'll do my best before the next time to have a bit more information on that.
Mayuri has another question.
Who is the author Obesity Fasting, please?
Of the fasting book?
Yes,
Jason Fung. Amanda's just put his name up for the cancer code book. He's done another book on the obesity code, and he's done another one on fasting. And in fact, he's co-authored one called Life in the Fasting Lane, I think, with two people who he's worked with and one who he's treated, who are now really experienced in fasting. So Jason Fung is the one to look at. If you go onto Amazon or Waterstones or any of those, look for Jason Fung, and you'll find amongst his list of books he's written several about fasting.
Okay, thank you very much.
I mean, fasting is something we could cover in another session, but obviously by the sounds of things, I've got quite a bit for next time. But maybe the one after that, we could do fasting.
Okay, I think that's done it for the day.
Okay.
We've had enough. I really appreciate for all the questions that has come up as well. And thank you very much, Carolyn and Daxa.
Thank you, everyone.
For helping us with all the questions. Once again, all the participants, thank you very much for attending. Do you know what? Being actually on Zoom is different from YouTube. YouTube, you can't get everything. You're just going to watch a little movie on YouTube, but you can answer or ask questions on Zoom. So it's better for you to come on Zoom, and then later on for catching up, you can go back to YouTube and watch it. But to to go straight to YouTube and just listen to our little sessions, it's not going to help you much. So it's better to be on Zoom and then refer to YouTube whenever you want. And yes, YouTube is free. It's you need to subscribe, but that is free.
Yeah.
If you've got Gmail, then obviously you can log in anytime to our channels. And if you're not on Gmail, you need to create yourself a Gmail email and then join in.
That's what you can do when you try to log into Google, I think, can't you?
Yeah, it is done via Google. So it is free that way. So do not hesitate not to join in, please, if you want to refer to the old sessions we've gone through.
Yeah. And if they throw up questions, then you can always put them onto the WhatsApp group, because those of you that are new, you can watch them, but if something isn't clear, then come onto the WhatsApp and ask, and we'll try and answer it for you. Somebody's just
live is always better. Live is always better because we can interact. With the YouTube, you can't interact, and it's just listening, and it goes off your head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, but this is why I suggest to join in Zoom is better.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate for people taking out time to join in. That way you can learn more as well, and you benefit more. At the same time, Rami Laben, I have sent you an invite to join our group. I tried to add you in, and it says you need to be invited, so I have invited you. So next, our session is going to be on the 31st. Is that all right, Caroline? Daxa?
Fine for me. What about Daxa?
31st. Oh, let me just check my diary. Sorry.
31st.
It's just after bank holiday.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be around. I don't think so.
I can't do the 31st. I'm really sorry.
You can't?
No.
Okay.
I can do the Wednesday though, if anyone's able to do Wednesday the 1st. It's just my course gets moved around.
Is that okay with you, Caroline?
It's okay for me. If it's okay for you, Panna, if you're able to.
And what about all the participants?
1st of September is fine for me as well. So the next session will be on the 1st of September. And as you can see, I'm still celebrating India's Independence Day. Happy Independence Day. They celebrate for the whole week. So I'm still celebrating. Tomorrow is Ekadasi, so try and join in our Ekadasi. And ladies, if you'd like to lose weight, you know what? I run Zumba classes and yoga classes. That should help you all. Please try and join in there as well.
Yoga's brilliant for your stress. So
please. This is why I thought, let me mention yoga. Because we have Patanjali Yoga run by Nina for 1.5 hours every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. So try and join in that. All the links are in the events group. And Zumba is done by Ami from Toronto on Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock. And she's brilliant as well. For our age group, it's good.
It's an Indian dance form. Indian dance form, but
it's in
lovely.
a Bollywood music form, and it's brilliant. She's really good, I must say. Even if you didn't want to move your hands or feet, it will make you move. That is how interesting it is. So try and join in our exercises on Fridays, Mondays, and Saturdays. So that will help you stress as well. Besides that, what can I say but to look after yourself. We don't want to be ill, and if you're going out, wear your mask and gloves, because I still am not secured with people going out without mask. I'm still shielding, to be honest, and I am scared to go out. But for you, if you're going out, make sure you have mask and that for your own benefit. Look after yourself. We shall catch up on the 1st of September. Thank you very much, Daxa.
Thank you.
Caroline.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Good night, all of you. Good night.
A couple of weeks. Okay.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Take care.
everyone.